Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I cover 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at soldiers in Postmen's uniforms. I previously covered this one back when it was on Kickstarter, and I'm a fan of Castle Itter and Pavlov's House, the former entries in the series. How does soldiers in Postmen's uniforms compare? Let's find out and get to the list. But first, 2 disclaimers. I was sent a review copy of the game, and I'm also friends with the designer of the game, David Thompson, just to put that out there. At number 5, we're starting with a full-on pro for the game, which is the resource management. And when I say resources, I mean several things. First of all, you've got guns in the building. You need to move them to the right floors and sides of the building so you can shoot the Germans effectively. Then you've got very limited ammo that can be used to suppress the Germans when they try to enter from certain sides. You've got grenades to try to blow them up if they breach the building. And the challenge of moving these elements to be in the right place at the right time adds nicely to the tactical puzzle and strategy of the game. And number 4 is also a pro, and that's how the enemies activate in this fully solo game. So there are 3 separate enemy decks corresponding to the 3 main attacks the Germans made, and they have different varieties of support units and assault units, and then when units come out, you sometimes roll to see where they spawn. And the variety of when and how these enemies come out add greatly to the challenge and tension of the game. Sometimes you'll have them charging down one flank and you can barely defend against it. Some turns they won't place new units at all, but they'll hammer you with artillery and rally you with machine gun fire. And another nice element that's been in all the previous games of the series are the tactic cards, which you can choose to include in increasing numbers to increase both the variety and the difficulty of the enemies, although it's a really difficult game to begin with, so I'm not sure you'll want that unless you're brave. But the positive of how the enemies work goes right into a mix for my number 3, which is the potential sameness of the attack patterns and the ways that each wave play out each game. To explain what I mean, in the first attack on the post office, the Germans will always come from the south. In the second attack on the post office and the third, they'll always come from the north. So when you play the game, especially after a bunch of plays, you always know that you want your units to be in the blue on the first wave, and in the red on the second wave, and on this floor in the third wave, so it has the potential to feel a little repetitive and samey in the strategy you execute. Although I have to say, since my initial coverage during the Kickstarter, I've grown to appreciate this element more, which has brought it up to a mix, because while yes, you do eventually learn where your units should go, the choices come in when and how you try to get them there. If you move them too early to try to prepare for the next attack, you might underestimate what's coming at you in the current wave and be overwhelmed, so it's tougher and tenser than I initially gave it credit for, but I still kind of wish there was more variety, maybe some alternate history scenarios that would change up where people showed up, I don't know. But I'm right back up to a pro for my number 2, which is the pacing and tension in the game. And this does go right to the attacks I just talked about, because the game has a wonderful structure to make you stress out, and that's the fact that these attacks come in 3 waves. And how it works is when you go through the entire attack deck, then the Germans will leave and your defenders can rest before the next attack comes. But here's the thing, if you have German soldiers in the building and leaders to direct them, you have to go back through the deck indefinitely while those soldiers in the building kill your people repeatedly until you can finally push them out and breathe a sigh of relief. And this give and take, this push and pull of soldiers building up, building up, building up, going away, building up, building up, building up, going away, and your defenders whittling down, resources running out. It's such an intense and stressful high point of the game, as long as you don't mind your heart racing. Definitely a big selling point for me. But finally, for my number 1, I'm going back down to a mix, and I'm looking here at the core actions of the game, moving your units around and taking actions with them. Now, the negative side of this one is going to hit some gamers more than others because it's focused, first of all, on the randomness. When you attack Germans, one of your main actions, you roll some dice, and if you roll poorly, your action is wasted, but your unit is flipped, exhausted, so you need a whole other action to flip them back up, which can be super stressful and frustrating if that was a key action, you spent a lot of resources making it happen, you just didn't succeed. And the other side of this that might not work for some gamers is that you have very limited actions. You do 4 moves and 4 actions, and then you have to resolve 5 more German cards. So some players might not feel like they're doing enough on their turn, might feel like there's an imbalance in running the AI against their actions. But with that being said, this is still a mixed leaning pro for me because I love the tension and the tough choices with so few actions, so many units to divide them among, and how between the moves and the actions and all the Germans coming on the board, you never feel like you can do everything, cover every angle. You have to make tough choices, sacrifice in some spots, and hope the Germans don't capitalize it. So it creates tension again in the game with a capital T. So overall, I continue to really enjoy the Valiant Defender series, and this is one that I recommend to heavier solo and war gamers, but also to starting war gamers who might want to dip their toes into the genre. You might want to check this one out if you like tough tactical choices with limited resources, and if you appreciate a lot of stress and tension in your gaming, but you might want to avoid it if you don't like a lot of dice luck or randomness, if you want infinite variety, or if you don't like historically accurate content in your games, because this is based on a very tough period in history, and I think David Thompson has done honor to it, but it won't be something all gamers want to play out on their table. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you at the next stop.